Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. I will call the meeting to order at what, 4:34? 4:31? Okay, 4:31. Okay, 4:31. That's why I'm confused. That clock is fast. So let's see. Lynn, you've got the roll? Okay, great. So we've got the roll call. Approval of agenda. Does anybody want to add anything to the agenda at this point? Okay. Seeing no calls, we'll consider the agenda approved. We are looking for approval of 2 sets of minutes. We did not have a quorum last month. So the September 12th, 2024 minutes, let's do those first. Could I have a motion? Okay, Bob is moving. Could I have a second?
Second it.
Okay, Nancy seconds. Any discussion or corrections? Any objections or abstentions? Okay, that set is approved. Turning to the October 10th minutes, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Nancy moved. A second? Okay, Bob will second. Any corrections or additions? Okay. Any objections? Okay, then we will consider those approved. So next up, in terms of business, we need to approve the 2025 meeting schedule. And hopefully you all had an opportunity to look at your calendars. I think I sent out a note that May 8th won't work for me because I will be not here. So I'm proposing these what, it would be the third, yeah, which would be yeah, you're right, the 15th. I can't. Okay, the 15th. Actually, I think there were 5 Thursdays in May. So what's good about that is even if we move a week later in May, then it will be roughly 4 weeks before the June meeting. So they're still kind of spaced out. Does anybody else have any other issues with the calendar? Okay, and we'll leave August like we always do. And typically we cancel and have our potluck. We'll have our potluck, but if we need the meeting, we have it there. Okay. So could I have a motion to approve the 2025 meeting calendar with the one change of May 15th for the month of May? Okay. So David is, okay. Do you want to move it?
Yes.
I just did, I thought.
Okay, good. Okay. And who's seconding?
Nancy was prodding me.
I was.
Good. Okay. So we'll put less pressure on Bob and the,
Under duress.
okay. So we have a motion by David and then second by Nancy, and any objections? Okay, great. So moving right along, we'll move to the town planners report.
Good afternoon, everybody. Fairly brief report. We didn't get the formal one really put together that we normally do, mainly because we weren't prompted by the governance committee, which is what we prepare the first committee, and that meeting was canceled. And so we usually, that's the one we use as a basis. But anyway, the town center plan is moving along on schedule very much. The next meeting is next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And we're going to start getting into the meat of things. The consultants are going to present a report on the results of the survey. And there were about I think about 870 responses to the survey, which is pretty good. And also probably some continued discussion of the interactions they had with some of the group meetings they had, which are also very positive. And begin to talk about various economic impacts that could impact the town center moving forward. On the plan of conservation and development, it is my intention to present to the TPZ at its December meeting, a hopefully final draft for begin their review process. And hopefully that by early January, we'll be given the formal 65-day review procedure where all of you will have an opportunity, if you so wish, to review and comment on the what is now the 2024, and probably when we're all said and done, the 2025 POCD, although I think we probably have to go off the regular 10-year clock, which actually expired now 3 years ago. At the TPZ meeting next Thursday, a week from today, there will be a discussion, among other things, on inclusionary zoning in terms of the town's efforts to incent and also require, as appropriate, workforce, affordable housing, whatever you want to call it. It'll be both a in-person and Zoom meeting. We hope to have, we've invited representatives of the council to sit in, because they're very interested. And we've invited representatives from Goldman and York, who wrote the original affordable housing program for the town, to sit in and join in the comments. I am working on, although I'm not optimistic, I'm going to have one put together. Still on the open space grant, I'm looking at one small property and one large property, neither of which I'm going to disclose, to see if I can get sufficient information on those properties to get them into a application to submit to DEEP. I have to also be in a position to have appraisals done by early January. The Watkins Simsbury Road PLR site plan will be coming before the commission at its meeting next Thursday for site plan. They have signed off on the master plan. It's now the developer's coming back with the detailed site plan for that project. I think it's almost been a month now that we've had the zoning enforcement officer in place, and he has been exceedingly active in both giving out citations and checking out zoning and blighted properties throughout town. And I can report to you that it's a pleasure to have him. He's made a big difference in our ability to carry out that requirement of our office in dealing with both blight and zoning infractions in town. The age-restricted housing on Blue Hills Avenue has completed all their land use reviews, and it has started their conversations with the building department. And I would anticipate that we would see a late March, early April groundbreaking in terms of earth movements for that project, which is exciting. And I think the last item, which is not directly, is that the mayor has made it one of her significant items is the improvements to Cottage Grove Road, both in its appearance and in its operation. And town staff had a meeting with the Capital Region Council of Government staff and DOT staff to discuss the issues that we have regarding that road in terms of its appearance, its maintenance, and its operational issues from terms of speeding, but particularly the Blue Hills Cottage Grove intersection, which in our abbreviated terms is an F intersection, which means it basically doesn't operate functionally. And obviously we'd like to get it up at least to a B intersection. I made it clear to the DOT our concerns that Bloomfield's basically been disregarded in terms of how they've looked at a number of the communities around our area. Were not really mentioned in the mobility study. We were basically blackmailed back when we were considering the Griffin line. The State Department of Transportation basically said to the region, if you approve the Griffin line, we will not give you any more highway funding. That agreed, basically 70 to 80% of the regional towns then backed off supporting the Griffin line. We see them move quickly to make improvements to the Bishop's Corner intersection of 44 and North Main Street. And yet we cannot get them to even hardly respond to any conversations we want to have on Cottage Grove and Blue Hills Avenue. So the mayor will be holding a meeting of her own with the commissioner to express her concerns and desires. And the staffs are going to continue to operate to see if we can finally make some things happen. You know, there's some there are development opportunities along that site, but it's not a particularly inviting street at this point. And basically, as we know, operates through two single-family residential zones as a interstate extension, one in Bloomfield and one in Windsor. Not particularly appropriate in terms of how to use. That pretty much is my summary. I'd be happy to answer questions. I'm sorry I can't give you some of that. Next time around, hopefully we'll give you both the building construction numbers and the zoning enforcement numbers, which we plan to do on a monthly basis. And happy Thanksgiving to you all.
Any questions? Claudia, and then David looks like he has a question.
I don't know if it's appropriate at this moment, so just tell me, but I don't know anything about the Griffin line
Griffin line
conflict.
the Griffin line is the old rail line that
Yeah, I know what it
No, it
is. Yeah.
back in the 90s, Bloomfield proposed that as, and a number of others, as a light rail
Yeah.
that ran from basically the north end of the town through and down into Hartford Center with 3 stations in Bloomfield. One at the north up at Griffin, what we called then Griffin Land, one in the center of town, and one down by Copaco. And, you know, with the intent that it would be extended to Bradley so that any successful city, as we all know, would have a direct rail link between the town center, the city center, and its airport. And we had secured money. That we were working in partnership with the Greater Hartford Transit District. And it had secured a significant multi-million-dollar grant directly from the federal government to begin the serious planning for that. It obviously had to go through the state of Connecticut. And the state of Connecticut was not supportive of it. And we had, that was really the first time the region had ever heard of transit-oriented development. And the 3 sites were transit-oriented development with retail and residential. And we had designs. We worked with the Yale School of Architecture. And they came up and did a charrette. And we worked with Jack Dollard and Dollard Associates. And, you know, it was really good. And they basically said, if you approve that region, we won't give you any highway money.
Do you know why they made that
They
decision?
didn't believe they were still, they did not.
They didn't think it was
They
valuable?
didn't think it was valuable. They thought it was too expensive. They were worried about operational costs. They threw everything in the world up to it. Meanwhile, the communities all around the country were building light rail systems,
Of course.
you know, and their fallback when, you know, 15 years later was the fast track busway system, which basically does nothing. Doesn't go
Doesn't
from
serve the
goes
airport,
from New Britain to Hartford, which is nice.
right?
And I think the city of New Britain has taken full advantage of it, and the mayor there has done a really marvelous job in terms of doing development related around it. But you've noticed that the other towns along the rail system have started to do transit-oriented development in a significant way. Bloomfield was just way ahead of its time, unfortunately.
I knew that it was in the works, but I didn't know any of the details, and I've been waiting to be able to go park at Copaco and go to the airport.
Not going to happen.
Ah,
David?
So two questions. One, of the 870 responses regarding the town center, can you give us a flavor of what, what the survey pushed toward? And this,
Cannot. I don't have the details.
so what, in a global way, what is the town center project then?
Well, the town center project is to rejuvenate both economically and architecturally, and connectivity, the geographic area from the railroad tracks on the east side, to job lots on the west side, and from Geisler's on the north side to Gab Road on the south side. The survey was very broad and basically, basically had, what do you like? What don't you like? What would you like to see? What don't you see? But then a lot of fine points in between. And I think the one interesting response that they discussed at the last meeting from one of their meet and greets was they held a session with the residents who live in Bloomfield at the apartment building next door. And to a person, they were very happy. They use the town center. They love the town center. They walk around the town center. They love walking around the town center. They eat in the town center, not just at the well-known restaurants, but at some of the other smaller eateries. And they had the team that did the interview came back, quite frankly, a little bit surprised, but really excited at what they heard from the folks that live and moved into the town center, which was great news.
The second question was, what is inclusionary zoning?
It's a number of things to a number of people, but to me, it's basically zoning that would either incent and or require a proportion of a housing development to include affordable or workforce housing or housing that is priced for people who are at 80% or less of the median county income. So it's a way to promote, and the reason that it's really, that it has some significance, one, it's important to do and we ought to do it. Two, there's a state statute that sets a trigger point of 10%. And if 10% of your housing, if less than 10% is affordable, then developers can come into town and basically build what they want of affordable housing with fair disregard for the zoning regulations. Bloomfield has always been over that 10%. We were at 11.5, 11.6. But with all the construction of the market rate housing, that percentage has gone down. And we're still over 10, but we're close. So there's two driving forces, one to stay above the 10%, but equally, if not more important, to provide it, to continue to make this town, a variety of housing types that are affordable to all. And of course, that's going to be even more challenged by the letters that all of you received in the last couple of days from the tax collector's office or the assessor's office.
Nancy? Looks like you want to say something?
Just a comment about I guess you would call it the opposite of inclusionary zoning, which is exclusionary zoning, which my understanding is that is in large part how Bloomfield came to be settled, because West Hartford is considered one of the very first towns to invent exclusionary zoning as a way to accomplish redlining when a lot of it was outlawed or whatever. They began to have zoning rules, which might include lot sizes and things like that, that would make it difficult for certain categories of people to buy property in West Hartford, and along with any kind of encouragement from the real estate profession at the time. That's how many people came to live in Bloomfield. So inclusionary zoning it's probably not well defined specifically, but the idea is that you don't have zoning that makes it harder for people to buy property and live in your town.
That's correct. was well put.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll move on to old business. Um, First item, possible revisions to the town's solar siting policy. Um, That's been kind of done in terms of our suggested revisions for a while now. At our last meeting, it was suggested that I send a request to the mayor with several, people copied, asking for this to go to the governance subcommittee. That hasn't happened. I sent a request on October 17th. I followed up just with a note to the mayor on the 9th, requesting that, I think the next scheduled meeting is the 2nd of December.
Right. She
Um,
canceled it.
Right. So I guess at this point, I'm hoping that maybe that you could, maybe,
Also just
I could,
drop a note to India.
okay,
India sets that agenda.
I'll resend it, yeah. And hopefully, I mean,
I don't want to give you any more work.
well, I don't think, and I'll just editorialize here, I don't think this is anything that's particularly controversial. It's basically the addition of a paragraph, kind of expanding the scope to kind of get at all manners of renewable and storage. And the attorneys looked at it, so it's just to give the town a tool if they want it.
Straight.
It's pretty straightforward, so hopefully we'll get that done and we can take it off at this point. Okay. Tree City USA application process update. Um, I keep saying the same thing. We're actually in good shape. The application has, 4 elements to it, and really the only thing that needs to be completed at this point is to put together documentation of expenses, eligible expenses in 2024. What we're waiting on at this point is what we would like to get started is a forest stewardship plan. That's something that was applied for. Trees for Bloomfield initiative, a subgroup of those folks, including David, worked on some grants or a grant application back in the spring. That didn't come through, and that was one of the elements that was in that grant. It's to get basically, a plan for about 1,000 acres of town land. And, where we're hung up is the town needs, it's an RFQ process. The town needs 3 quotes. We have 2. We've gone out to, Dave Malesko has gone out to 6. We had a third, and that company bailed at the last minute because they didn't have the time. They felt they didn't have the time. So there's 5 more requests out. We should be getting, hopefully, that third quote back by the end of the week. That's the target. And Dave thinks he knows who he'd like to use. So, yeah.
With the procurement process, if you requested a quote.
Yeah.
And they don't give you one back, I think that constitutes as a
Okay.
second ballot. Just check with procurement because I know that,
Yeah, and that's what Dave was going to do. So,
so you don't have to
I
wait,
think if you
continue to
made the
wait.
request and you don't get an answer, you still made
That's
the
an
request.
answer. Yeah.
okay, I hope that's the case because that is the question I raised. And the person that was going to provide the quote has been saying he would do it for like 2 weeks now. And then on like Tuesday, he said he wasn't going to, he wasn't going to do it. Okay. So yeah, that would be very helpful because I think we're ready, I think, I shouldn't say we, the town is ready to pick somebody. And, it looks like this particular contractor does a nice job. And I think it was the contractor that the town was interested in early in the year. So we just need that. And that gives us a baseline in terms of Trees for Bloomfield projects. It just gives us a lot of information in terms of kind of a long-term plan for, working on the tree canopy. So,
So is the stewardship plan, that's different from the right of way?
yeah, and just another piece of information. There is another grant that's opened up that is available for right-of-way inventory. So, that was something, again, that was applied for in the spring. So Dan Carter should be able to take that work and apply for a section of right-of-way. And some of the money that was allocated for Tree City by the council, that money can be used as matching funds, right? And so that kind of helps us get 2 years' worth of expenditures for 2 years of certification as Tree City. So hopefully these things that the town has really been pushing for a long time now, the stewardship plan, forest stewardship plan, and getting more done on the right-of-way inventory, we can really kind of get a lot of that done. So that's what we are.
Kind of quotes are coming in for the stewardship plan.
It's interesting. One came in for like 17.5 and one came in for 30,000. And, you know, that's where we are right now. We'll see what the third comes in at, but the one that came in at 17.5, that contractor provides a good product, and that is the one I think that was utilized in terms of the earlier grant. So we should be, you know,
And the $50,000 is spread over 2 years. I
yes,
think you said.
yes, yeah. Yeah, because it's a fiscal year. You know, the challenge is it's a fiscal year allocation, so it spans 2 calendar years, but Tree City certification is a calendar year thing. And again, lots of things that are being done under the umbrella of Trees for Bloomfield can count, you know, as efforts for Tree City certification. The certification is simply that. It's an application form. You talk about the things you're doing and, you know, provided that you're expending the appropriate amount. What is helpful about going through it kind of for the first time also is getting a sense of the work that is done kind of on a run rate basis year over year in terms of operationally. There are things that the town does now that are eligible expenses. So going into the budget season, that's helpful information, say for Dan Carter to have, because he will have a sense of, okay, we need to ask for some money in the next fiscal year budget, but that actually would be for the 2026 calendar year. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, there's not a lot that's happened because we're basically there with the work that's been done. It's just kind of putting the, you know, the final page together, and hopefully getting this, you know, satisfying purchasing so that we can kind of move ahead. So that's where we're at.
And the board that's required for the application, has that been defined?
Yes, the board is the town staff. We have to recertify every year. So the point is, at some point, if you want to change something, you can. But to get certified for the first year, we are going to go with what we have, which is DPW people. And that's kind of what we're doing. So,
Just never have understood why people who have been working all along are not on the board.
okay, because that we've had this conversation, so just to say it again, that's because the tree board, as defined by the Arbor Day Foundation, is a board that is appointed formally by the town council. And the town council has been getting into the business of trying to have less boards and commissions. This would be a new board. It would be a new board with people being appointed for some term, being reappointed, and so forth. So the fact of the matter is, by having town staff charged with the responsibility of being the tree warden, taking care of the canopy, to get certified for year one for 2024, we can use that without doing a bunch of extra work. So we're not doing extra work. So that's where we're at. Okay.
Tell you that the engineering division is now fully staffed. over in DPW, both. They have
Good.
an engineer, we have an assistant town engineer on board and working.
Good. Okay, so that's the update on the application process. And again, it's a 4-page application. And really all we're trying to do is make sure we are getting the $43,000 of what counts for eligible expenses to be able to get certified for year one, and then we're up and running. And then it's just you get recertified every year. And you can change things. You don't have to keep things the same. So that's what we're doing, okay? I will just add that, part of the application and part of what you can write in is volunteer efforts and what people are doing to volunteer to support it. So, all of the work that Trees for Bloomfield does, is recognized and counted, so. Okay, so moving on. Extreme heat, and this sort of ties into the CROG Hazard Mitigation Climate Action Plan, which now,
Has been adopted by the council.
awesome,
Last meeting, finally.
great,
And so we will fill out the CROG resolution and get it back to them.
great. Okay, and Nancy, you were taking on trying to get ahead of like the next heat wave in 2025? Or
First of
maybe
all, it's
sooner?
very warm in here, so, but yes, and I actually have things to talk about this time as opposed to say I haven't done anything on it. So yeah, so extreme heat is one of the several listed hazards in the CROG plan overall. And by looking at Bloomfield's own action plans, it looks to me as though it's maybe second to our biggest concern, which has to do with flooding. It looks like many of the action plans specifically address riverine and pluvial flooding, which I assume means rivers and just plain too much rain creating flooding. But there are also some extreme heat tie-ins with some of the action plans. So specifically 6 action plans I thought in our now adopted action plan include, and we wouldn't be involved in all these, I'm just going to list them. Getting a generator for the senior center, as that has been identified as a cooling center and emergency center, and I gather there's no generator for it yet. So that's a high priority item that the town, not us, would be likely to be working on. Connected to that is the transportation plan to get people to cooling centers. So for those who maybe don't have easy transportation in the event of extreme heat, or any other kind of emergency, how would we get them to the shelters? That's another high priority. Medium priority is to work with CIRCA, which is Yukon's climate research organization. I forget all the words, but to create plans that our public works department mostly would put into action for what we call now a new acronym, ROARS, Resiliency Opportunity Areas, which I assume means areas that are not very resilient and need to be made more resilient. We certainly could probably name some of those in our own town. Public education campaign around floods and extreme heat. Asterisk that one because that's what we've talked about doing. And then it actually says pursue sustainable Connecticut certification, which we'll talk about later, I guess. And then update the town website for hazard mitigation and emergency preparation tips. So that's an extension of the education campaign, I would think. So those are where we might overlap with the town on the CROG hazard mitigation plan. As far as sustainable Connecticut, the items that they sent to us, or you sent, I think they sent, that relate to extreme heat, there are basically 2 main items with subsets. One is to plan for a heat emergency. That requires a lot more resource than we would have, but it's certainly something I think the town should do, and I don't think we have. I'm not even really sure we have a great emergency plan in total. Whenever I've asked, I get directed to the website, which shows me some list of FEMA stuff. So I don't know, there's maybe a plan, but I'm unable to actually find it and read it. But the steps for creating a heat emergency plan or any emergency plan would be to create a committee, which might be, yeah, which it might be the climate emergency task force that we keep tossing back and forth, to conduct some sort of an assessment. And in this case, it could include things like who are the populations that are at greatest risk from a heat emergency in this case, or areas of town, that sort of thing. And then again, create or disseminate extreme heat educational materials. So again, the tie into the things we have been talking about doing. And then finally, to create the heat emergency plan, townwide plan. And we could participate, but not be the creators of that plan. The other item under Sustainable Connecticut is more specific. It's inventory or create or improve cooling centers. And so we do have some. Our libraries are some of our schools, maybe, I don't know about town hall, but there are some already identified in town. We can, that item would include assessing the existing cooling centers. What do they have? How many people can they hold? You know, just sort of a checklist thing. Identify gaps in our potential to bring people in out of the heat. Whether it's regional, whether it's accessibility, size, whatever it might be, hours available, and then to enhance. And also then identify how could we fill in those gaps wherever there are gaps. And then the third one seems a little silly. Well, maybe it's not silly. Enhance by suggesting 3 or more amenities that could be added to an existing cooling center. So I don't know. One thought comes to me would be like, well, people won't come to a cooling center if they have to leave their pet behind or something. So maybe if we don't have any that allow cats and dogs, we need to think about that. Anyway, so that's the landscape of things that the town might be interested in doing. But I still, from that, I'm still saying we could start with the public education. We could maybe do some of these assessment things too along the way. But there's a lot of information out there. I'm not going to go through it tonight, but it's, I got stuff from the World Health Organization. I have stuff from climate podcasts and radio shows with citations of scientific studies and things. But I believe that the effect on human health from extreme heat is grossly underestimated by most people. And although we've been spared from anything that's a prolonged heat, dangerous, life-threatening heat event, it's perfectly possible to happen here. So that's basically where I am with that. So based on that, I would just like, any input anyone wants to give about what we as a committee it would be most appropriate for us to do, and just the guidance at this point, because Jess has volunteered to work with me. She's not here tonight, but that's fine. And probably some other people that don't have to be on the committee who want to work on, what is it we should start to gather and how should we get the information out to people, et cetera.
Is there a warming action plan?
In the case of a power outage, is that what you mean?
In the case of extreme cold?
Oh, not that I know of. Nope.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean,
Okay.
there are some simple policies in place in terms of opening up facilities to provide, but in terms of an overall action plan, I know the topic has come up in conversation, but I don't think anything has been put in place.
Yeah.
Formally.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I just think it would be a good thing to match the two and
Right.
simplify it.
Yep.
The facilities could be very similar.
Look at both. Yeah.
Yep.
Claudia, did you want to say something? And then,
Well, I just had a thought. If we took the education responsibility for educational materials, right? It's kind of a good idea because even if the heat is coming tomorrow, the planet is warming and it's a way to bring attention by focusing on what will happen here, what could happen here, actually. So I like that idea of creating some materials, even if we're not in full plan mode yet. Maybe it'll make a difference in how people think about it, and I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, but I think it wouldn't just be around town facilities either. It would be personal health information and just knowing what being in high heat for a long time can do to you.
Yeah.
You know, you might not have heat stroke, you might not be carried away in an ambulance, but you can still have some after effect from not being able to cool off for an extended period of time. So it's not necessarily that we have to, bring everybody to a place, but in your own home, how do you make sure you're safe? And when do you need to ask for help?
Just two things, and then I want to go back for a moment. The first is I'm just always energized by this committee's willingness to undertake additional activities. And I'm sure the chairperson will remind you that I believe you set a list of things that you wanted to work on, and I would make sure that this is within that priority list that you set for yourself coming this year. I think it's a very worthwhile effort, but you guys already have a fairly busy plate.
We
The
do.
second is I was very remiss in my report to, I may have already told you this, but I was successful. And it really grew out of a presentation here and then contact that I received from the chairperson. The town has entered into a partnership with the Green Bank
Ah.
to basically a formal partnership to investigate the methods and financing of installing solar installations on the two libraries and 330 Park Avenue. And the Green Bank is in their assessment phase right now with an obvious intent to be able to submit to the auction in, I think, early February.
That's great. That's good news. Thank you. Okay, does anybody else have comments before? I have one thought. We're coming up on the holidays. I don't know if we're gonna, how much room we're gonna have on the December agenda. But we should be, with the work, the preliminary work you've done, which is very helpful, I think, just kind of looking at the plan and, thinking about what we could do. Probably good to, maybe, not that I want extra meetings, but maybe we have a working meeting, a special meeting in January to pull up our priority list that we developed. It took us a couple months to do it. See how this fits in, which I think it will. And, talk about kind of what approach we might want to take, and maybe we can get a sense of what town staff in various departments might be able to offer or might be interested in, so that we're kind of moving in the same direction on something in terms of what we do. It's always good to kind of reassess a year later and go, okay, we've done some things, what do we want to do in 2025? So, okay. Anything else? And I do want to say hello to Leah from Windsor. Hi, Leah. Thank you very much for sitting in. We appreciate it. Yep.
Thank you. I would just say that if we want to narrow down, which it might be narrowing down or it might not be, the work and do it specifically under the umbrella of Sustainable Connecticut,
Yep.
I don't think that's bad.
Right.
So that, if that wants to be our guide and we take the outline from Sustainable Connecticut and we say, all right, let's do this, because pursuing Sustainable Connecticut is both in our last year, or
Yep.
2024,
Right.
last year almost
Right.
goals, and in the CROG. Then we could do that and just be more focused.
And be getting some things done in terms of getting recertified. Yeah. So, yeah, very good. Okay. Thank you. That was a good report. Much appreciated. P and Z regulation, incentives to promote installation of renewable energy. That's just there, always. Yep. And
Yeah, we haven't, we want to get through some other items first, but we have not forgotten them.
okay, yeah. So it's going to stay on the agenda as old business and we will not forget it. The environmental planner position, I left that on in part because, you know, we sort of keep talking about it, but in order to move something forward or to lobby for it, I think we need to probably sit down and present our case to the town manager. I know that the zoning enforcement officer has some environmental planning background, which is great, but that's not part of the job description. We've talked about trying to do something with Windsor. I think if we want to do that, we need to, in terms of sharing a resource, if we want to do that, we need to make sure that the Windsor town planner is, not town planner, the Windsor town manager is on board. So I was going to have coffee with Susan Miller and that actually ended up getting canceled, needs to be rescheduled. But I do think if we want to pursue doing something with Windsor, we need to start a conversation. And I am going to reschedule coffee with Susan Miller. But is somebody interested in making an appointment with me, a short appointment with me to go talk to the town manager? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I would only, I think, meeting with the town manager is an excellent idea, and I would meet with him before I reached out to Peter Souza, because I think the manager is developing a good relationship with Peter Souza.
Good.
And if Al buys into it, then I think he would join you in reaching out to town manager Souza.
Okay, so I will send out a request for a meeting and hopefully we can get that on sooner rather than later. I had a conversation with the town manager, with Al, very early on, and I think I mentioned it at the time, and he seemed very receptive to, open to the idea. But that was a while ago. That was several months ago. So
Peter Souza is the,
Windsor.
Windsor Town Manager, yep. And has been for many years, right? Yeah, yeah,
Senior,
yeah.
and a very good town manager.
Okay, moving on to sustainable CT recertification. I sent around like an Excel file right before this meeting, and my apologies because one of my follow-ups from the last meeting was to send that out. And I don't think I did after the last meeting. So okay, well, yeah, did you get it a while ago or today? Because you're,
I got it today,
okay,
but I don't,
so, so I think I didn't and thought I did. So not everybody in the room has had an opportunity to look at it. But this is the work that the Sustainable CT Fellows interns did for us last summer. And what they, basically they took what we had done for our original certification back in 2016, I think, or was it 2019? I'm looking at Kevin, who's in the, when did we originally get certified for sustainable CT? Because you were part of that. You were on council then. Right. Okay, so the award where kind of newly certified towns was in 2019. Like certification is good for 3 years, and so our certification has expired. So that was an attempt to look at what activities we had done for the original certification for bronze that potentially would carry over if we're continuing to do those actions. I also had sent some material that Kevin Goff and myself had provided, I don't know, a year and a half ago to Stephanie Baramian, who was working on looking at certification at one point. So it was a number of things we had done since the original certification that would count for credit. And I think a lot of those things would count. We've done more since. So that kind of gives us an idea of where we probably have something and just need to check it out, and as well as the gaps. So the question is what the committee wants to do, how active a role we want to take in terms of doing the certification work. In the past, I think we've done more as far as providing material and providing the documentation so that somebody on town staff can kind of upload and, get it into the portal or whatever. So I just want to have a discussion around that. I believe there are 2 opportunities in the calendar year. I think there's an April deadline to submit, and then I think August. So I'll just open it up for discussion and see what people think.
What would the role of the environmental planner be with Sustainable Connecticut?
The original environmental planner, who was Ashley Stewart, she was originally hired and tasked with complete streets, working on complete streets and getting sustainable CT certification. So, I mean, it's helpful to have somebody, I think, with the background. And I think it's helpful to have somebody who can, quite frankly, do the administrative aspect of it in terms of getting the materials in and kind of filling out the application. So that being said, it's not impossible,
But there's not a person now who would be doing that.
there's not a person now, I think, there's not a person now who has been identified as being somebody who would do that. Right. That's not to say that maybe there are possibilities. I don't know. So.
I feel that it's kind of a hard thing to ask volunteers to do. It's not impossible, but it's sort of like asking a volunteer to write a major grant proposal. I've been asked and I've done it on a volunteer basis. It takes a great deal of time and,
Right.
focus.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard to, as a volunteer, to picture yourself saying, sure, I'll do that. And if there were a staff person who, and I'm not really sure how I would prioritize getting recertified. I think are we sure how we prioritize it?
The short answer is no. I think the short answer is no. We've talked about, what's the value of being certified apart from kind of the recognition that you are, certified bronze, certified silver. I think the belief is, from those who are a little closer to it, that with the amount of, the things that we're doing, we could probably achieve silver certification. I've heard that a couple of times from different people. I think John said that, in fact. Again, I think the real need is to have a point person that you can, because the person who's doing that, and this is always the challenge, the person doing the work on the application is an aggregator in terms of collecting material, to, you know, supply evidence that we're doing these things and to demonstrate that we have the points needed to get a certain level of certification. And, you know, I certainly see our job as CEC to be able to provide those kinds of materials. And it's not hard to do if you know you're going about it, because when Stephanie was pursuing it 2.5 years ago, for example, I set up a folder, and anything we were doing in CEC or Trees for Bloomfield, I just would dump articles in there, I would dump documents in there so that you can collect it. But again, it's more having an aggregator and somebody who is familiar enough with, you know, what the categories are and what the required actions are, so that they can be tracking it and they can be letting you know where you have gaps and what things, you know, the town might need to work on. So again, you know, there are 2 opportunities each year. I'll be quiet in a moment because I'm talking too much. I mean, I think Nancy's point of the whole extreme heat and maybe extreme cold, you know, in terms of things we can do as a town and things that fall within our bailiwick as a committee that are aligned with sustainable CT, we should do it, because then we can start checking the box. Yeah. So, yes, Kevin.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to comment on this because I was around when I was on CEC when we first, and so was David, when we first decided to pursue sustainable CT, but it was definitely with the notion that we were going to get part-time environmental planner. I think the point you're making, the person who does this, or anyone who does this, and this is sort of Claudia's point, has to be aware of what everyone is doing. So they have to be aware of all the initiatives that are going on in the town, not just within CEC, and they have to be able to sort of follow those projects through. The thing that the town has never taken advantage of, and this is another reason for having someone dedicated on staff to be, at least part-time on this, is the reason to pursue sustainable CT, or sort of threefold. One is you sort of check off that you've done all these great projects, and it sort of keeps you focused on doing that. That's a good thing. But the other 2 reasons are, there are lots of resources within the sustainable CT world. There are grants, there are ways the town can get money, and this sort of goes, this goes sideways to the other thing that came up repeatedly when I was on council was, the town needs or one of the debates was, should the town have a dedicated grant writer, someone who is trying to pursue these opportunities? And it sounds like, John and Linda are doing a great job of trying to do that. But again, if you have various people doing that, you never quite know what's going on. The third aspect of it is the marketing of it. When we got our bronze status, David Mann and I went to a workshop down in Vernon that was dealing with their conversion of some old mill properties to affordable, and how different types of housing, how they could rehab this and use it. And we actually got a tour of one of the projects down there. Now, granted, that doesn't quite work. That specific model doesn't work for Bloomfield because we don't have factories and mills. But the thing about that event was, the moment we walked into it was held in Vernon. Vernon was, I think they had silver status. We went to our places, in a bigger room than this, but, there were probably 35 people from around the state there. And, we got a, reusable water bottle marked with Vernon Sustainable CT. I mean, they were pushing this, and we still have this problem in our town of, we go to events that Bloomfield puts on and they still use, single-use plastic water bottles rather than reusable water bottles. But, you know, the whole point of sustainable CT really is to get this, you know, virtuous circle between, okay, here you have the citizen action, you have the town is implementing these processes, the processes then become part of the marketing of the town, you know, part of like why this is a good community to live in, and it's a good thing. I would think that a lot of these, you know, these things that we should be putting on for sustainable CT type projects, or, you know, we left on the agenda the whole thing of incentivize TPZ regulations for incentivizing solar and paths and all that. That should also be part of our plan of conservation development. So checking off the sustainable CT thing should be consistent with proceeding along the 10-year plan for the plan of conservation development. And I just think, you know, as much as this group, and you know, I used to be part of this group in earlier inception, CEC has always been a very active, very, you know, people are focused and do a lot, but it's hard for someone on, you know, someone who's not embedded within the town structure to do all those things and get all that going. I mean, yeah, CEC could probably take it on to get recertification, but would any of those other things happen? Would the grants follow? Would, you know, would we use it as a device to change some of our things? I mean, we've talked about recycling, things like that. So that's my 2 cents.
So Nancy wanted to say something, but Bob, do you want to say something? You were leaning forward. Okay. Nancy, did you want to say something, and then maybe David?
Well, I just wanted to bring up the energy plan again. Because I think that was something that in her iteration of the job, Stephanie was working on or trying to create the baseline for usage and things. I don't know, maybe it wasn't related to the energy plan, but how are we doing on the energy plan? Who's shepherding it? Because it's not us, again, for the same reasons of what Kevin just said, we can't push things. I mean, we could, I suppose we could, probably could, but we can't accomplish much of what's in here. So I think that was the other argument, and one I believe I've made in person to the council, is we passed a climate emergency resolution. We created an energy plan. Probably some things were done, and I know there was baseline usage data, maybe separately from the plan, developed in a database. We're, as far as I know, we're unable to get an update to that, if there is any update. I don't know. So where's the emergency crisis, you know, chaos part of what's coming? You know, it's not really anywhere. And if there isn't someone whose job it is to wake up every day and look at the plan and see what can we work on today, then we will be floating along like this for some time. And doing little educational seminars with the library and putting things on the website, and people will never see them. So, you know.
Yep.
Can we get help with grant support from Sustainable Connecticut without having a bronze plaque?
Yes, I mean, but we can get grants in terms of grant writing.
I'm not talking about grant writing.
Yeah, there's funding available, yeah. Because remember, we had people come
Remember
in.
very well, and
Yeah.
that was one of the most attractive things
Yep.
from the Sustainable Connecticut people, that money is available. But do you have to be a certified
No.
town in order to get that?
No,
And would the process of getting that grant support contribute to points for Sustainable Connecticut? I would think it would. I mean, if you just look at the things you've named on the agenda tonight.
oh, yeah,
That are happening, including in John's report.
Yep.
With, you know, if I go back far enough, the rationale.
Yeah.
Sustainable Connecticut supplanted a request for simple suggestions that the TPC follow in new construction in the town.
Hmm.
There was a request to have a simple list of things that be considered. That was shoved aside and we went into the whole sustainable Connecticut thing. And it's a plaque. So my enthusiasm for it is not great.
Yep.
Getting support for a grant is a good thing.
Actually, Linda, did you want to say something or no? Um, Bob, go ahead. Lean forward, please. Yep, use the mic.
Very old information, but probably goes back 5 years that uh, South Windsor decided not to reapply. They applied once. I believe they got silver. The town planner, I guess it was, but she spent a whole lot of time doing it. They got it. And when it come to renewing, they just decided it wasn't worth it.
So,
I've challenged that before.
Oh, yeah.
I thought I heard from the town that it was worth it. And so, but I do notice in the CROG plan that it has low priority of all the, among all the other action plans in the hazard mitigation plan. So, I mean,
Yep.
regardless, I guess. I thought my understanding was if you had it, it made it easier to get grants, but it does, and I don't.
I don't think so.
Okay, so
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I don't disagree with what David or Bob said either. If you just get it to have the plaque on the
Right.
wall, I agree, I don't think it's worth doing.
Right.
But if you pursue it to embed these practices within the town, included in your plan of conservation development, long-term goals, market it, change your procedures,
and you get a
and
plaque.
get grants and use it to get grants and use it to, when the extreme heat comes along, they already have something prepared, or when something
Right.
happens wrong, then I think it's worthwhile. I mean, it's one of those things. It's how you use it. It's not, if all you're doing is we want to check the box and we want to get the little plaque, then I'm with David.
Okay, so Bob, and then I'm going to wrap. Yep, go
I was gonna
ahead.
say this-
And actually,
I just want to say it is a good recognition for the town
Yeah.
on all the works that they're doing. So definitely, I believe would be worthwhile.
okay, go ahead.
This sounds a lot like applying for bicycle-friendly community. You look at what you've got, make some plans, and in doing that, you've accomplished something.
And I'll just say, in Tree City, USA, right. Here's, maybe I'll wrap it with this, just this comment. I think there's value. Let's plan in January on doing a relook, an assessment, kind of looking at where we landed last year, because we did a lot of analysis last year.
Did a lot of what's on our list.
Yeah, we did a lot of what's on our list, so let's look at that. And I think the whole point of using the sustainable CT checklist and looking at the activities to the degree they fit with the kinds of things we want to work on, at a minimum, we can start doing those things, because then we're starting to fill in categories. So let's not make it necessarily an end in itself right now, but let's start down that path. There are 2 opportunities each year, to get certified. And, to John's earlier point, we spent a lot of time last year developing a fairly robust list of things to do. So it's good to take a look at that anyway, I think. Okay, people look like they want to say something, so I'm gonna, one last opportunity and then we'll move on. Okay, I thought this was a really good discussion, and this is what I was hoping we would do today, to just sort of discuss it, a little bit more thoroughly. So thank you. New business, I did not have any specific new business items this month. I think we have a lot on our list. So at this point, I'm going to move into announcements and updates. The Trees for Bloomfield initiative, the photo contest reception is going to be on December 17th, okay? It's not that much later than last year, but we had 32 photographers with 54 entries, which is really good this year. I mean, it's grown again. And the judges have made their selections. I'm in the process of compiling what I need to compile for printing, mounting, matting, and getting it to the people who do the work. So if anybody wants to help me plan a reception, I welcome the help. Yvette Pinnell is going to assist me. It will be in the great room. You're all invited. Everyone's invited because, you know, it's a fun event and just a nice way to celebrate the end of the year, I think. David, can you talk about the 2024 Trees for Free planting?
The trees are all planted.
Yep.
I think that went very well. I think the drought is a real danger to not only the trees that are just planted, but even the trees planted in 22 and 23. So one of the things that's going on right now is the 2022 and 2023 trees are being checked. And that's happening.
Starting Friday, right?
Has to be done by the
Yeah.
end
Yep.
of this month.
Who's doing, am I supposed to do that?
If,
Trees, or is it gonna be more professional people?
No, this is not, these are.
if you have you gotten an email? Okay, then you're probably off the hook. Kevin and I got one, so we'll be checking on trees.
Recently?
But
So,
yeah, David's right. The drought is a real danger. Yeah.
This is, well, I mean, it was good. People had, again, I think a great deal of fun and satisfaction in planting the trees, in meeting the community, in working with the residents. I mean, it's a concept that comes up again and again and again. So,
Good. Thank you. Let's see. That's, well, okay. The next announcement is, we had talked about doing a dark skies program, like the effects of light pollution on, you know, migrating birds, insects, people, wildlife, fish. Pretty much light pollution affects kind of life in general. And we missed the fall migration, so we are scheduled for March 5th. Nature Lecture Series, it's going to be a Zoom, a webinar with Marjorie Winters, and we are co-sponsoring with Trop Rock Ridge Land Conservancy and with Parks and Rec. So it should be a very good program. She's a good speaker. And so look forward to that. Put it on your calendars. And I think January 8th and then probably February 5th. February is 28 days. Yep. February 5th would be the other two programs. One is going to be on the January program is Dr. Carol Chia from the Windsor Agricultural Station. She's the person who is a expert on using biological control lady beetles to deal with hemlock woolly adelgid. Yep, and she's been using those beetles for a couple of decades now. They've been released in Farmington River Park, in Northwest Park, kind of basically along the Farmington River. And she gives a nice presentation and she's going to talk about her work. So she'll be talking about kind of what she's done in Bloomfield as well, which is nice. And then Brad Klein and I forget, Dennis, the golf course. We're going to get kind of a presentation in February about the golf course, Wittenberry Hills, and just how that is managed very effectively and well for wildlife and in an environmentally sustainable way. So, thank you. Yep. Yep. So, those should be good programs. Okay. Did you want to say something?
Other,
Not yet. Well, okay, we'll be there in a moment. Okay, when we get to other. Okay. Just very quickly, there was a climate action forum on 10/23. I think this is kind of the next step. Remember we went through that, what, PCAP priority, the PCAP CROG. This is what they're getting ready to do, the CCAP, which is which is what going after specific grants to implement, given what's in the priority plan. Claudia and I attended. Dan Carter was there, and I think our town engineer as well, Rob. And I did a session with Waste Management, and I mean, it was very much of you were working at tables with people. I think it was more CROG trying to actually, it wasn't just the Capital Region Council of Governments. All the councils of government were represented. And I think they were just trying to get more feedback on what people thought really was important so that they can kind of focus more on what to go after. Yeah, the grants. Did you want to add anything?
I sat at the transportation table.
Yeah,
I thought it was, well, it was great because there are all kinds of people there, I love that stuff, but I thought it was a little unfocused. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't anyone's fault. I wasn't really sure what we were trying to accomplish, other than to share our personal experience of transportation in our table.
right. Yeah.
But it was fun to do. I mean, it was worth it, in terms of just expanding what you're thinking.
Right. Yep. I think that's a pretty good summary. Yep. So that's it. Other business or announcements. Yep.
it's really. Seabury composter.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Oh, the composter.
Yeah, it's not a totally positive news. The composter we have, they've been having a lot of problems with it. They're kind of nursing it along. They've been working with the manufacturer, but I had heard they are going to actually be replacing it with the later model that's supposed to solve some of the problems they're having now.
Is this the third one now?
Yes, coming. Next one will be the third one.
Like it's a bit of a challenge.
The first one was a total failure. The second one seemed to be working good for quite a while, and I'm not sure exactly what I guess the problems occurred when they started taking contributions from residents, and it couldn't handle the variation, I guess. But maybe, hopefully, this third one will handle everything that's considered compostable.
Shout out to Seabury for being the guinea pig with composters.
Yes,
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
Early adapters.
yeah, that's good.
You want to mention Laura's project?
Oh, yeah. Laura Palandre came and unfortunately, the school, I think, is very receptive to doing something with her. But because of the fact that they've already gotten grants in 2 years from this program, they couldn't go after it again this year. So hopefully we've kind of, she's kind of opened the door to kind of have a conversation. I need to follow up with her, but that was unfortunately, that was kind of what happened at the end. So we have, I wrote a letter, you all reviewed it. Thank you very much. And at this point, we will put it on the shelf and hopefully she'll get an opportunity to pull it off the shelf and use it another time. But that's what happened. So,
We had a couple public comments now.
Sure.
Well, I just heard today, Seabury hopes to include some solar on our new addition.
good.
That's,
Rooftop.
and also
What new addition?
Huh?
What new addition?
the 24 apartments in the extension of the south wing,
Of the south wing?
right? And the total number of apartments will not increase. What they've been combining studios together and reducing the number, and these 24 new apartments will essentially keep the total number the same.
Is this the area where they're taking down some old cottages?
There's a couple of old cottages
Old
are coming
cottages
down,
that are
yeah.
coming down. Okay.
But I said that, but
Yeah.
also the combination of existing units, which is several are doing one by one. I'd say they've combined 5 or 6 so far.
They're doing that at Doncaster too.
Combining, yeah.
Nobody wants to live in a closet.
Yeah. Well, higher income people are moving in evidently.
They're taking down.
Yeah.
It's not what they're doing at Doncaster.
Anyway, okay, any other news or announcements? And actually, it's not, I mean, it's public comment or committee member comment, but yes, go ahead, Kevin.
No, I just wanted to, from the earlier thing, I jumped in when we were talking about the environmental planner and sustainable CT, but the mention was made, I think, by Nancy about generator at the Alvin and Beatrice Wood Human Services Facility. If you look back, there was a lot of debate about that at the time because that was a missing feature. But the response at the time was that no, the cooling center is Carmen Array School. So maybe the need now is to say that we need more than that. But there was a lot of debate at the time because I was on council when they were doing the final stuff. And there was a lot of debate on the time about adding a generator to the plan, as well as solar, as well as an irrigation system, several other things. Thanks.
Yeah.
I just want to mention, I believe, and I would have to get updated on this, that our farm, the 4-H farm, also accepts compost drop off because they have the, what do they call it? The black what?
Black soldier fly.
Soldier
Black
flies.
soldier fly, which is what Laura uses, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know whether they are interested in expanding that or not, but I'm aware that they've had that for a couple of years. So, just in case we ever want to look into other ways to get things done.
Yeah. Well, I think we probably will. I'm guessing. And anything else before? Go ahead.
Just more of a question.
Yeah.
There's 93-acre town field across the street from Seabury. And there was a solar developer that looked at that, and somebody brought up that they thought there was a conservation easement on it, but it has not been nailed down that there is, or anything further on that.
We did have conversations with the possible developer, and we informed there is a full conservation easement on that property that protects it forever as open space. It also serves as a very significant drainage facility. Therefore, neither solar or any other development would be appropriate at that location.
How did the conservation easement get on that 93 acres?
When the town took title to the property, that easement was put on at that time. It was transferred to when it was transferred to the town, the easement was put in place. So it's on the deed.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Leah, would you like to you have any comments or? Nope. Okay. Motion to adjourn? Okay, Bob, second, Nancy?
Sure.
We are adjourned at, I have 5:57. Okay, okay, 5:56, okay. Thank you, everybody.